Today we're going to look at MIG welding with Flux Core, and we're going to do that on a 110 MIG welder, similar to what you'd be using whether you're getting it from Lowe's, Harbor Freight, or just a general 110 welder. What we have here is two spools of 030 wire. One is going to be an inner shield or Flux Core, and one is just a hard wire. Obviously this one will require use of gas. We'll use a C25 gas. So we'll lay some basic beads with both. We'll do a T-joint and we'll section it to see which one has better penetration. Alright, so first we're going to start with the Flux Core, the inner shield. So when we put this in, you're going to notice that typically on Flux Core wires, they're going to call for DCEN, DC electrode negative. Electrode negative meaning what comes out of the gun will be your negative and your ground will be your positive. Now typically for normal MIG welding, you'll see here that this is for the gun, you're positive and your ground is negative. So for Flux Core, you'll want to switch that. So you'll see on your feed rollers, but right here, like this one is stamped 030 or 035, and on this side it's stamped 023. So we need to switch this over to the 030 side. Since we're running Flux Core, we don't need this tip for gas. So this would typically screw on, and gas would flow out around it into your pool. This one just screws on just to protect all the components. Right now we have 30 thousandths Flux Core, not 35. We're going to go down here for 12 gauge. It's 105 thousandths thick. It's calling for a 35 thousandths Flux Core to be at G3, so it's just a good place to start. So on this Lincoln, we're going to go G and 3, and that's just a good spot to start at. Now I have already taken off this mill scale. Since this is Flux Core, I use the theory of if it has slag, you drag. Alright, so that's the first pass. As you can see with Flux Core, there's a lot of slag on it. It leaves a lot of debris. So that's the flux removing all the contamination out of the air and shielding the metal as it goes down. Alright, so that's just standard Flux Core. So let's simulate outdoors a little bit. We're going to turn on a fan, just blow it across to Now I didn't see any issues with that. Now the biggest thing with Flux Core wire is keeping your stick out distance right. You want about a 1/2 to 5/8 of length. And truthfully, I'm used to being a little closer to that with running solid wire and gas. So I'm always trying to shove that wire in a little bit more. But just like outside, if you have a breeze going, it doesn't affect the Flux Core at all. So that's one of the big advantages of welding with the Flux Core. If you're welding outside, you don't have to worry about the breeze taking away any of your shielding. So here I'm going to show you that if you're using the anti-spatter spray, it really helps on cleanup, especially on Flux Core. You don't have all the little BBs everywhere. And I think what we'll see is an improved cleanup on this part. Alright, so you can see with just a little bit of that spray how many BBs are stuck to it out here versus all of them out here. I don't know if that's going to be easy for you to see or not, but it makes it much easier for cleanup. Just a little bit on there and it cleans off so much better. Now we're going to do a T-joint, and we'll weld one side with the Flux Core, and then we'll come back and change the wire and weld the other side with the hard wire with the C25 gas. And then ultimately we'll slice it and show you a cut and polish. So we'll just put that on. 30 thou wire, it says J5.5. And we're going to go into the beginning part of J and 5.5. And before we start welding, let's turn our gas on. And I'm going to run around 15 to 20 CFH on gas. See it goes down there? Now this is hard wire with C25 gas, same 30 thousandths diameter. Okay, so you can see a little difference. I had to tighten up a feed roller on this one to try to get it balanced out. But you can see just a clear difference in the welds themselves. Cleanup is much better with the gas. You don't have all the splatter. But I want to show you one of the really big advantages of the Flux Core over the gas. So we're going to simulate the same outdoor air condition. The weld was not getting good coverage. Got a hanger there on the very end, because you can see the big pit from the underside. The molten pool had a big pit in it, so when I stopped, it built up over it, and you can see the big void that's under there. All right, let's run the back side of these T-joints now. So we're going to section a couple of these welds. We're just going to cut them in our fine slugger cold saw. And we're going to see which penetrated better, the 30 thousandths hardwire with gas or the 30 thousandths Flux Core. Okay, so they're polished. I've got some etching on them, and we'll find out here in a few minutes how the welds look. Alright, so I sectioned the part, polished it, and put a little developer on it, a little etch. Trick we learned from watching welding tips and tricks. A lot of good information on there as well. But you can see on the hardwire side, looks like I got some lack of fusion there at the in the root. And this is the Flux Core side, maybe a little bit there also, so a little technique I need to work on. So there's the hardwire MIG side, and there's the Flux Core MIG side. All right, I should have used some of the anti-spatter spray on that. But otherwise, I don't think either weld's very horrible other than that lack of fusion in the very root. So I usually try to, as I come in, push the wire right into the root and come out. Looks like I need to spend a little bit more time in the root of it when I'm welding. All right, but that's where something like this works good. All right, so that was using hard wire with C25 gas and some Flux Core rod, both 30 thousandths, both out of a 110 welder, so they'll both do it. It struggles a little bit with that thick of wire. It really likes that 23 thousandths wire. Even knowing the guides and everything say 25, typically it's 23.023. Right, so you can do a lot of work with the 110 MIG. You can't get some of the penetration that you can with 220. It likes a little more voltage, which is all by your wire feed. Right, so when you're looking at welding, it's really about what project are you wanting to do. If you're welding indoors, I prefer C25 gas, hardwire. I think cleanup's much easier. Overall, I think it's a much cleaner process. I prefer it. But if I had to weld outside, Flux Core is a great alternative. I don't have to worry about, is there going to be a breeze come by and take away my shielding, and now I got to grind out the weld. Right? So I hope that helped you. So what we'll do is, I'll see you on this video with some tips and tricks on welding itself.